All right. So, I think one of the big problems that MSPs struggle with their clients, or they assume that the SMBs know what ransomware is, what the pain really is, and that's not the case. And that's what really got that post. That the reason we're talking is like it's not fear-based selling. What you're trying to do is educate a business owner that this is really bad. You're not trying to scare them. You're just saying, do you realize the moving parts that you're going to have to deal with while the world seems dark and you're worried about your business and you have employees crying and you have, everybody worrying? It's like, do you know how bad this really is? And the reality is SMBs don't, right? They don't know that. So it's like, it is MSP's responsibility or to their, if you really want to do well with cybersecurity, you have got to let SMB business owners know what they can expect. Not threaten them, not fear, but it's like if this does happen, this is the things that you probably aren't even prepared for. What do you think about that, Craig? I mean, do you think that that's the case or not the case?
I absolutely think that's the case. And here's what I've really noticed. And part of this is some of my background in psychology has taught me this through my doctoral, um, whatever. I went through almost,
Studies
yeah,
degree,
I
and
went through everything but my dissertation for industrial organizational PhD psychology.
okay,
And
yep,
so I stopped there because we started Simplify T and I couldn't do both. And unfortunately, that's where I landed. But the part of psychology that was very helpful was understanding the experiences that people have versus who don't have those experiences. And
yep,
you can't convince someone who's never had an experience what it's like. And I
right,
liken it to when someone's mother passes away. And I learned this too partially from my healthcare world, where
yep,
I would walk around and oh, your mom passed away. I understand how that feels. But then the reality is I don't.
I
And that's
don't,
almost disrespectful. And the
right,
same for organizations when it comes to breaches or any type of incident like that. If they've never experienced it, they do not understand it. And
right,
so
right,
sometimes it's the buddy that got breached and they saw that, or the
yep,
family member or someone close to them experienced it
right,
and they saw that.
yeah, yeah.
It's not the ones that have never experienced it because then they just don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, and if you can't get someone that actually, so you're totally right. If you see, a colleague or you see a family member, you see the pain that they're going through. But some of the things that I believe MSPs could do is, walk through, an example. You do realize if there's ransomware, there's a good chance that those criminals are still in your system. So you're not going to use Teams and you're not going to use
Right.
Exchange. So how are you going to get your 10 top leaders to collaborate? How are you going to do that? Well, we'll use
Yeah.
Teams. Well, now not,
Right.
and now you have some of them are at home, some of them are in the office. So
Yeah.
you can't use Teams and you can't use email. Are you can't stay on a phone call for the next 9 hours, without any communication, or if you could, but you're so used to using, Teams or some kind of messaging app, and it becomes very difficult. And I think if you start asking those type of questions, the business, well, I'll just use Teams, I'll just use
Right.
email. We can't. This is a change. Like the world has just changed, and you don't know that. And so they're like,
Yeah.
oh, they start to think like that's not going to be easy then, right?
Sure.
And that's
Sure.
kind of the pain that I'm talking about. Then that's not that painful, but it is though. Communication is the most important piece. And if you're still worried, and the other piece of that is, what do you mean they're still in my system? Well,
Right.
they just encrypted everything. We don't even have the time yet to figure out what systems have been breached. They haven't. They're in here. You have to assume that. Oh, God, well, get them out. I can't.
Yep.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like so. It's like when you start looking at that stuff, it's like, wait, this doesn't make any sense. The old world just changed, right? And that's what I think we have to do. And I'm not trying to be fear-based. I'm trying to be, that's reality. This is what happens.
Yeah. So I'm pulling up this. I'm going to share this, although it's just, let's see if I can share it, present. It may not let me. Window. Yeah, I thought I was gonna be able to share it, but it's there we go. It's not letting me share it for whatever reason. It's just, it was a note, but it was this post, and I want to read this post because it kind of goes to what you said. You basically said,
Yeah.
I've gotten some pushback when I talk about the pain of a data breach. The context that I use, pain, is describing to a business owner what happens in a data breach: the financial pain, the anxiety, decision-making requirements without enough information, the anger, reputational harm, the employee anxiety, the sleepless nights, the ongoing reputation issues, the angry customers, and potential layoffs. Just from that perspective, like, people don't think about that level.
Right.
What do you think an MSP can do when they're sitting at the table and they're talking about cyber, and
Yep.
the other guy is just like, we've never had a breach, and I just couldn't imagine us ever having one.
Right. Yep.
Like
Yeah.
everything you just said is so devastating
Yep.
post incident.
Yeah. Yeah. So your first question is really hard, right? It's, if I don't believe I'm ever going to be breached, I don't care about that pain because I'll never experience it. I'm driving a car, I'll never get into an accident. I don't care about all the pain that you're talking about and why I should wear a seatbelt. It won't happen. That's a tough one. But if you can actually so I don't have an answer totally for that, but if you can get the customer to at least admit or see that it's a possibility. It is a possibility. It could be random. It could just be bad luck. But if it does happen, let's go walk through some of the questions. And I think if it's question based, what are you going to do to communicate? What are you going to do to communicate with employees, right? You can't communicate with employees because we can't use Teams. What are you going to do when you have angry customers calling and saying, I haven't got a response. Whatever. The website's not working, or what do you do? So it's like you almost have to lead them down the point that, let's talk through. It's a tabletop, right? Let's talk through this. Who's going to talk to the press? If you get a call from the local newspaper, who's going to handle that? Is that going to be you? And some of the things are going to be that, I have a feeling that the business owner is going to say, well, that's your job, Mr. MSP or Mrs. MSP. It's not my job. That's public relations. That's your job.
Right.
And who's going to pay the ransom if you do pay? Well, that's you. I'm not paying criminals. That's not my job as an MSP. I don't even know how to take dollars and turn them into crypto. Okay. And so I can actually make that payment. Those are the things, if you start walking someone down to, well, who's going to do it? Mr. or Mrs. Business Owner, let's talk through that. This is the stuff that you're going to be forced to deal with without any preparation. And so that's that side of it. Which I think is, if you don't make it, if you don't, and what I would advise is, don't go all in, right? You can make it as dark as anything. And if it's too dark, I think humans, and I'm talking to a PhD here, humans, phase that out. That's just too dark. I can't process all that. But if you can make it somewhat relatable and believable, asking questions, asking things, like, I think a business owner could start to feel like, wow, this is going to be chaos. This is really going to be chaos.
If you walk into an organization, I've experienced this. If you walk into an organization, well, let's say they make $1 million a year, and they say, well, how big are breaches? Say, well, the average is $3.4 million.
Doesn't matter.
This is an amygdala moment. They're fight, flight, or freeze. And what they're going to do is say, I don't even like that's. I just close my doors. I would just close my doors.
Totally. In fact, I hate the $3 million breach. I like the 250,000.
Yes.
172, because 172,000. Okay, I can make it through that, but I'm going to have to lay off Jane and Bob and whoever. I'm going to cut back on Mark. But and so that's where, like, that's going to be bad, because then you start to think, if I have to lay people off, I don't want to. I have to face them. I have to. That's when your mind starts going. But the 3 million, you're right. It's like, well, I don't have 3 million, so it doesn't matter, right?
Well, it pushes it so far away that you're going to end up, they're not going to do anything, and they're going to say, well, I'm just done. I'm fine where I'm at. One thing that we recognized, and we did this, and we're against fear-based selling on any level. I think that just that is just wrong. And it's, to me,
Yep.
and I'm sure there are people that will listen to that disagree, but morally, it doesn't work for me.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
what we learned, at least to help to some degree, is that we started with a conversation that we're focused on that. And we basically give them a door out. We just say, we're super focused on cyber.
Right.
We are here to protect you. But if you are disinterested, I'm not going to beat you up trying to get you to, I'm not going to beat you
Yep.
up into submission to believing that it's important. I can't adjust that for you. But
Right.
if you are interested in protecting your business and your longevity and the people that work for you, then we're here to have a conversation deeper into this. But if not, totally okay. And we're here
Right.
whenever you're ready, and give them the ability to get out.
Yep.
Because
Yep.
like you said, the hard conversation is everyone's different. Everyone has a different pain point around that if you can figure that out, then you could hone in on that. But you would spin your wheels attempting to convince someone otherwise.
Right. And
Uh,
also I think to the the majority of SMB owners don't think, you know what, they're going to come after me. Okay. They're not there. I'm a small law firm. I'm a small print shop. I'm a car dealership. I'm not going to get targeted. And they're probably right. But it's probably, I like the approach of, it's probably going to be a random phishing, random vulnerability, random,
yep.
they're testing, they found something on your firewall because of automated, port scanning and all it's going to be purely random.
Yeah.
So although, because if you think I'm not going to be targeted, then I don't have to worry about it. If
Sure.
you think it could be random and we're sending out millions of phishing emails in the next 6 months, and we're doing port scanning forever, and if there's a misconfiguration, it's completely random. It could happen if it's a random thing. Oh, I don't like that as much as I like the fact that I'm too small, they won't target me. And you're right.
Yeah.
So, but we always talk about targeting and SMBs, and they're defenseless against that. It's like, yeah, they're just easy to breach once you actually found the way in, right?
Yeah.
Or
Yep.
or found some vulnerability. And I like that approach, the more random piece. I mean, don't get me wrong, they could be targeted, but the
Sure.
more random says it's a possibility, because if you send out 1 million emails and 5 of your employees receive them,
Yeah.
you got to hope one of them doesn't fall for it, right?
Yeah.
And then that's the random events that now triggers all the other pain that we were talking about.
Well, there's such a false sense of security around some of the things that people will implement in their organization. And it's just as simple as even MFA. Like
Yep.
MFA, yesterday's top level security becomes today's basic hygiene. Like, and it
Yep.
happens that fast. And
Exactly.
so, it used to be that signature based AV was the thing, and then it
Hmm.
became EDR, and then now
Yep.
EDR is basic hygiene. It
Yep.
misses. So we do use an MDR solution, and they said that only 15% of incidences actually get triggered are found by EDR. So they're
Yep.
missing a big portion of
Yep.
that. But it's always moving, and so even in the businesses that you talk to, and they say, "Well, we're good because we have MFA." Well,
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times a week I'm hearing that people are getting their tokens compromised, and then they're
Yep.
just backfeeding into and around passwords and MFA, logging into systems. We had somebody call us not that long ago, and they got into the CEO's computer, and they were able to ship out a $1.2 million wire because of the data
Yep.
that they had available at their disposal, that the CEO had no idea that they were even in, but they stole
Yep.
the token, and they used
Yep.
Google Chrome and a cookie editor and added it back in. And all of a sudden, voila, they're into that infrastructure, that Office
Yep.
365 account. There's just so much that people rely on as a sense of safety
Right.
that doesn't exist. It
Exactly.
literally is not
And
there.
if technology really was the solution, we wouldn't have a cybersecurity problem, right? We'd have,
Right.
the firewall blinking would work, the
Yeah.
antivirus would work, your EDR, your MDR, that would all work. And it was like, we'd be fine. But we're here, right? And we really do have it because of all of those things. It's and you do need multiple layers. You need to focus on the technology. You need to focus on the process, not to focus on the people. And it's really, we're getting to the point where we have to convey that to the business owners, because we sold them the firewall and the the definition based antivirus, and we may have upsold them to an EDR. Why do I have to keep adding more stuff? I thought you're protecting me. I'm trying, but it is a moving target. It's not an easy conversation.
No, and it's gotten more expensive.
Yes.
What we did 5 years ago compared to what I remember, there was a moment, and it was a silly point of mine. Like, what else is there? EDR kills it all. Like, that is the thing.
Yep.
And then you realize, even a year later, people they're passing that up. Like, I mean, you may as well just keep the door open because they're going to walk in because they're using normal things. What do you think? Have you figured out any way from the MSP's perspective to be able to, get more in alignment with businesses when it comes to, this? Let's say we have eliminated this fear-based selling, and we really want to be more strategic. Like, what's the factor there? What helps them create that ability?
Yeah, it's not easy, for one thing. I mean, we should admit that. I think you have to have some real conversations. You have to be able to say, like you said, that CEO, he didn't even know that someone was in the mailbox. Well, how does that happen? So in telling those stories and in saying, this is what we heard, this is, a CEO just like you, this is what happens. You have to be able, you can't just say SMBs are being targeted, or 60% of business go out of business in 6 months, which is not even a true fact, right? But all of those statistics, you have to actually give a case about, this is what happened to a CEO, this is what happened to an employee, and walk them through it in a realistic, believable way. And it's like, then they're at least their mind now opens to, that could really happen. What do you, and like what you said, you take the MFA token and put it into Chrome. They don't know what that means, right? How do you? That's magic. Like, that's magic. I mean, I have trouble. I have trouble knowing what that is. But so I don't think that's it. But talking about, okay, the employee got this call, which sounded real, or this, So the other day, one of my clients, they had a business email compromise issue, and I won't go into the details, but the domain that was registered took a W and used two V's together to make the W. They registered it. They were inside of a mailbox, and at the exact time of the money transfer, they sent it from the 2V domain, and said, we're not taking credit cards now. Send it to here. And it happened. Yeah. And it went on. It was $75,000 just transferred away. Right. And they had no idea. No one knew, because, they were asking questions, but they were talking to the V domain instead of the W domain. And it didn't come to light for like 2 months because there was no response back. And then the client got really angry and all that. And then it was brought to light. But those type of stories, can that really, that's how easy it is. 2 V's instead of a W. How do we know that? It's like, well, if it's 14, think about this. If you have a back and forth email conversation, do you check on the 14th email, the domain? No, probably you're like, well, that's Bob, who I've been talking to Bob for the last 2 weeks about this renewal. I'm not going to check every single letter. That's how easy it happens. Like, oh my God, I didn't know that. So if you can actually have an open and honest conversation, another business owner could at least say, that sounds, I would never have checked that. Exactly. And that's how you start to get to the point. It didn't talk about, some kind of technology. It talked about how an employee made a mistake and, didn't catch something.
It's an experience-based selling process.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
versus
exactly.
The fear to me is more of coming in with a hammer and going, "Hey, they're going to destroy you. You're going to have to do this." Blah 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 blah.
You'll be out of business.
Versus
You'll be out of business in 6 months, right?
Let me tell you about the experiences. And actually, we had one very similar to that. They did just like what you're saying. They used they paid for a G Suite account.
Yep.
And then they were in the AP. The person that was in AP, they were in their account, and they took a picture of the email and they put it into the other domain and sent it. And when it got back to
Wow.
the CEO, he says, "That's my like that invoice is real."
Yeah.
And they even went down through the signatures and changed all the signature addresses as well. So there
Wow.
was not like they took some time and they took some
Yep.
effort, which is generally not what we hear. But what we often hear is it's low hanging fruit. It's the easy ones
Yep.
that they went all out for that.
They
I mean,
went
they
all
paid
out.
money, they took time and effort.
Yep.
Like they went all out. And if
Well, you think about it. So in this case, they were in someone's mailbox and they saw that, here's the invoice that was sent. This is $70,000. Like it's worth it, it was worth a week's worth of work to get that $70,000,
yeah,
right? So if it
yeah,
was a $5 transfer, you're not going to do that. And that's the other piece that I think is really important. Explaining the whole initial access brokers, the whole reusing dark web credentials or credentials that have found there. It's they don't care who you are until they get in your network. And then they're poking around going, it's a small business. I'll just go sell it to somebody, right? And I'll
yeah,
sell it for
yep,
$500. And then you're a
right,
ransomware victim. Or, holy shit, excuse me, this is there's an opportunity here for
sure,
hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars. And now, you're selling it and someone is digging in and taking that time. So, that's the one thing the other piece of talking to an SMB owner, it's like, no one knows what they're getting. They have the credentials. They log in using those credentials. Employee reused it. They're in the network. Then they figure out whether you're big or small. And then, but they're in your network. And can that really happen? And explaining how that really does happen and why, employees shouldn't reuse passwords and why you should have MFA and how potentially could stop it. And those are experiences that I think that's the approach that could really be helpful. And I don't think there's
yeah.
any shortages of those experiences.
No, it's being able to just provide them and
Yes.
communicating them and not, it should be one off to some degree. I
Yep.
mean, because you should have a handful of stories, and let me tell you a story. And
Right.
even as you're talking and you are looking at the person that you're speaking to, recognizing whether it's connecting or not, well, it should allow you to
Right.
shift to something else until they go, "Oh, that
Oh,
happened?" Yeah,
yeah.
then
Could
you've
it?
got a
Yeah.
now you've got a vein that you can
Yep.
work through to say, "I'm just here to keep you safe," and, like,
Right.
we implement all these things, and I do think it's a tough place, especially because there are so many people out there, and MSPs that aren't it's unfortunate that they're not as focused on security, and I still think there's
Right.
a pretty sufficient amount of MSP-based organizations that are still IT,
Oh, yeah.
like, support
Absolutely.
related,
Yep.
that haven't really taken that step to saying, "No, I wanna be security first." And
Right.
I think at some point, if that industry ever evolves as a whole, our industry evolves as a whole, the questions get to be completely different because then every time they talk to an MSP, even, A
Right.
company down the road or B or C or whoever, they're all speaking the same thing and it becomes like
Right.
an aha moment. But when you
Uh-huh.
have those who say, no, 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 we are a good support team. We'll put an antivirus on your computer and we'll sell
Yep.
you 10 block hours a month.
Right. Right.
Well, that's not
Or
helping anyone grow.
we're still managed service, but we're $80. We're $80 a user, right? And so how
Yeah.
do you,
Yeah.
you're trying to compete against this person who's now told that business owner, if you just put these two, we'll put a firewall and antivirus and we're fine. Well, we're almost, we can guarantee you won't be breached. It's like, that's what business owners are hearing. And they want to hear that. They
Yeah.
do hear it. And it's not, we know it's not the case. It's not the reality, but that's the problem in the MSP business. If we were all at security focused, that it would be a standard conversation. These are the things that could happen. And but if someone is selling, what's it, what oil is it? Like, so it's not, it won't happen to you. You just need
Oh,
antivirus and firewall. And then it's
yeah.
like, I believe this person,
Yeah.
they're an MSP. You're telling me something that he's already solved. So it puts the whole industry in a tough spot there.
Well, anytime you don't have an experience, I think of it as, it's a pothole. So you're driving down the road and there's a pothole with this lacking of experience,
Yep.
and it will take whatever comes first. and falls into that hole, and it will start to create and form some sort of belief based upon what I just
Right.
heard because I didn't know
Yep.
and I didn't have anything. And if the first person that comes out says, man, all you need is AV and you're good. All you need
Yep.
is MFA. All you need is conditional
Yep.
access. And they're
Right.
both, and I say this as awkward as it is, whatever. It's the sheepskin of 2023. I mean, it's
Yep.
not protective at all. In fact, I don't even, we did this test. We did this several weeks ago. I said, what happens if you use Microsoft 365 MFA and
Right.
you put conditional access on it? You say only in the country. So only in
Yep.
US can you be a part of this. So I use ExpressVPN. I grabbed my phone. I went to an incognito window and I shipped myself out in Mexico and I came back
Yep.
in and I logged in. Do you know that it let me put my email address in? It let me put my password in and it authenticated with my MFA. And then it finally says, you have successfully logged in. However, you are in a country that is not allowed to log in. I was like,
Right.
you just told them
Yes,
everything.
exactly. Exactly. Well,
If
thank you. Yeah.
Right. So now he just bought VPN Express and now he just went back
Right.
in again. And guess what? He's all the way in again.
Yeah.
We're to a point to where you have to have multiple layers. And for those people that aren't in the security space from an MSP perspective, like it's way beyond time.
Right.
And, and I,
Absolutely.
and I think if we can get in a situation where we tell the stories and we have the solutions the best that we can, but we never say we guarantee that, right? It's never
No,
a
no,
guarantee.
no.
It's the best effort. We're doing all the basic hygiene stuff, all of that, whether we're continuously training, not just once a year, but every week, every month.
Right.
It's constant phishing assessments. It's keeping people on their toes. Like it's a
Yep.
whole thing to it, but everything needs to have a support model to it. And
Right.
you can't, there are enough people in our space from let's just call it a profit perspective. There are enough security solutions out there that will be managed for you by the vendor.
Right.
We're no longer in a place where you say, I don't have the support staff to do it.
Right. Right. I'm not a security expert. I don't have a SOC. You
Right.
can get that. I mean, you can
can't
outsource it. In fact, you should.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
I would be very hard pressed to say people should be building, 724 SOCs. I mean, it's not going to, it's not realistic if you're a small to mid-sized MSP. It's just very difficult.
Not. And if you don't have a good foothold on clients, building an MSP right now is probably really challenging because there are vendors that literally will manage their own products. Like the actual vendors, whether it's Bitdefender or SentinelOne, they'll all manage their own products for you. You just have a little bit of there's an ad on that, but you just mark that up and sell it. And you don't have to be the security expert, but you have the backing of people that are. Like
right, exactly.
It's
one thing we didn't talk about, which I think is something that MSPs should be leveraging or at least been involved in, is cyber insurance, cyber liability insurance, because they're doing a lot of the hard work for you, right? You may not be able to convince a small business that they'll be breached and it could be just random, whatever. Forget it. You don't believe me? It's fine. But if you want insurance, you bet, you're going to have to fill out this application. And this application is asking you, are you training your people? Are you phishing? Do you have MDR? Do you have firewalls? How fast? I don't like, but the applications now is, can you restore your network in 4 hours? Can, they're getting to time based. When was the last time you restored a full backup and how long did it take? Because some of these cyber liability insurance policies are paying, on lost revenue, right? So if you're a ransomware victim and you're down for a week or two, after a certain time frame, the policy will start to pay for some of that lost revenue. But the carriers want to know, you can't be down for 3 months. You got to be back up in 8 hours, and we'll take that chance. But if you can't really say, I can restore my network in 4 hours or 8 hours, I can be up and running, and if you've never tested it, because we know lots of MSPs are basically, they've back up, if they're using data, they get some screenshot that says, oh, we're fine, we could definitely restore, but they've never actually restored because the client doesn't want to pay for it. And it's a laborious process.
It's work.
Restoring
it's work.
It's a lot of work, right? And so I'm not doing it for free, right?
Yeah.
But then, so how do you answer on that application? You can restore in 4 hours if you have never done it. So my point here is that the carriers know, right? They've seen enough claims. If you could actually leverage that, you may not have to convince the client that it's really going to happen, but you can say, I don't care if you believe it, but you're going to have to say yes if you want insurance. And so let's work together on implementing the stack that is really going to be needed to be able to satisfy the insurance carrier. So that is a huge piece. Everyone talks about HIPAA and CMMC and all that. I've had a lot of experience with government, compliance.
Yeah.
Insurance is the best, because if a business owner wants something and they can't get it because they don't have something implemented, they have no choice but to implement. That will be a huge driver in this. And I really think MSPs should make themselves very aware of these applications and how they can frame the conversation with a client around some of these requirements.
That was a whole podcast topic on its own, and
I
don't want to dig too deep into it, but we can do this again.
Yes.
Some of the things that I find really fascinating. I'm actually more concerned with cyber liability policies that don't have big applications. They're concerning to me because they're likely high retention, they are low coverage, and they have exemptions that are through they just everything.
That's probably it, right?
Yeah,
it's
right.
It's like, okay, we'll give you insurance, but we're not paying.
Right.
It's like false sense of, because when you lower the barrier of getting into a policy, you have to fix it someplace else, is probably the exclusions and all the things that aren't covered, the sublimits and all of that. But you're right. We could have a whole nother conversation on that.
Here in Kentucky, it's the general. He's the cheapest car insurance in the state, right? Because they give you the minimum. But then when you get in Iraq and you have a $10,000 payout and you just crashed into a $100,000 Escalade, well, guess what? You're now self-insured for $90,000.
Exactly.
So,
right. Exactly.
It's important for MSPs to really ask that question up front. Do you have cyber liability insurance? Is it enough? What was your application? Did you fill one out? Can I see it? Are you actually doing what you say you're doing?
Exactly.
Because that's a different situation. And if you are in this one nugget that has really helped us significantly in the MSP space, if somebody says, what should I add to my MSP? The response should be, I need to look at least 6 cyber liability insurance applications, and I need to check the boxes.
Exactly.
And if I can do that, then that's a statement I get to make when I walk in to say, we build our company around cyber liability insurance, and we're here to make sure you get the best rate you can possibly get at the lowest retention requirements with the highest payout, because we've built it this way.
I think that's the sales process. If you could get really, really good at that, God, it would be so much easier to sell, the pieces of your stack that you want. So, that is definitely an area that I think MSPs should make themselves very, literate in, and understand those policies and have those conversations, because that's the key right there.
Well, we can wrap this up. I really appreciate you being on here, and based upon what we just brought up, which was that insurance thing, let's get back together again and let's talk really specifically about how MSP should handle insurance applications, not only for themselves, but how they should handle that with their clients and how they can build their business around it, because it is the first time that you've got something that's pretty sticky. Outside of a few that I do know a couple that haven't really been hit hard with the cyber policies, but they didn't offer very big policies, and they don't have a lot of requirements. Generally speaking, they're getting into the dozen pages and better for an application. And so let's dig into that. But I do appreciate it.
That would be great.
And thanks for coming on, and we'll catch up again.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Bye.
Take care.